The third running of the Le Mans Virtual 24 Hours took place this past weekend on the rFactor 2 platform. With $250,000 up for grabs, technical difficulties caused a lot of problems for many of the major teams and some of the biggest names in both sim racing and real-life motorsport. Most notably, two-time Formula One world champion Max Verstappen, who provided a mic drop that sent shockwaves through the sim racing community. Well, after what has been a very, very busy week of sim racing, there was, I think, in sim racing's history, the biggest ever mic drop provided, and it was a big one. Um, Yannick, first of all, good to see you again.
You too,
Good to
Alex.
have
Thanks.
everyone back with us here on Sim Racing Unlimited. But there was a lot of social media traffic on this one, and it all stemmed around one particular event.
It did. The final of the Le Mans Virtual at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in rFactor 2, which didn't exactly go according to plan, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, major issues throughout the event, pretty much. In the beginning, there were, I think, 2 red flags for server issues, server crashes.
Mhm.
And yes, certain people, or most people probably affected by that, weren't too happy. Some big names in that in that field too.
Yeah, I mean, you had the likes of two-time current reigning and defending Formula One champion Max Verstappen, who we will get onto as part of this conversation.
Hmm.
Felipe Drugovich, who's last year's FIA F2 champion. We had the likes of IndyCar stars Felix Rosenqvist and Romain Grosjean being involved. We had major works outfits such as Peugeot making its debut at the Virtual Le Mans Series at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. We also had Alpine, Van Wall, Mercedes, Porsche, BMW. The list goes on and on.
Hmm.
And I mean, this is not the first time that a major event has been affected. Last year, we saw the VCO the SimGrid VCO World Cup, the 12 hours of Kyle Army, having
Hmm.
to be red flagged, and the race was not completed. And also the SRO Esports IGTC 24 hours had to be rescheduled. Now, that was through DDoS attacks. But Le Mans Virtual did come out with a statement, which you will now see on your screens. Now, unfortunately, the 2 servers that have been used for the 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual have had a suspected security breach. We are now taking the actions necessary to increase security and will aim to restart the race as soon as possible. Now, that happened after the second red flag.
Hmm.
There has also been talk on social media that people have inadvertently uh, shown the login details, the IP addresses of information that was not for public knowledge, because
Hmm.
we these things do accidentally happen when people do stream, and we're not throwing anyone under the bus on this at all. We're taking an abstract, indirect view as to what we think could be done better. Um,
Hmm.
Kuno Simulazioni and 505 Games have worked to put things in place, such as Cloudflare, which effectively stops a certain amount of web traffic. VPNs are also quite secure as well, virtual private networks. So thereby, like on my computer, I use a VPN all the time, and
Hmm.
it is a secure. It's actually helping for security. And with these VPN programs, you can also get an alert as well whether someone's trying to hack into your personalized data. So there are other ways in which these things can happen. But the biggest mic drop was by Max himself. And the way I'm going to give him a shout out on this one, because he has said it in a way that was calm. The cadence was right. It
Hmm.
was not. Um, it was not aggressive like we've seen him in many times in the Formula One paddock. But he said the following: Honestly, it is a joke. You cannot even call it an event. It's a clown show. That's why it's better to retire the car, because driving around in P15 for 6 hours makes no sense for anyone. It's a disgrace with all the effort we have put in as a team. I really hope the organisers consider where they put this game going forward, because on the platform, it's not going to work. It's game over. I think I have more chance if I just go to Vegas and the casino. I would have more chance to win. I think I'm going to, and these are the biggest words that he said. I think I'm going to uninstall the game. That's nice. Frees up a bit of space on the PC anyway. And I hope everyone uninstalls the game. That, to me, Yannick, when you hear it from someone who actually has a vested interest in sim racing, he is actually a part owner of Team Redline. And it wasn't just Team Redline, the number one LMP car, that was affected, but Oracle Red Bull Racing Esports in GTE, who were also battling for the crown. They were actually leading the standings coming into the final round of the Le Mans Virtual Series, and they also suffered dramas. There was a lot of talk from a lot of people, Moritz Lerner, Random Call Sign, Jardier, and there was a lot of toxicity around this subject, which just goes to show how easy it is. So it was not a DDoS attack like a lot of people had suspected. There were security issues. I mean, I have to give a shout out to the broadcast team. So Martin Haven, Ben Constantinos, Chris McCarthy, Lewis McGlade, Alex Brundle, and Haley Edmonds. They did a fantastic job of trying to keep the show running whilst these red flags were in place. And that shows that the broadcast side of it and the organizational side of trying to get these headline names and teams into it is not the issue.
True.
And this has been talked about on a lot of other YouTube channels, particularly by people within the community, that have said that rFactor 2 effectively is probably not the right platform for the Le Mans Virtual Series. But there was also a Studio 397 statement made after the event. And that also gave people, where they basically said that they were doing a full investigation. And I think the terminology "not our fault" was possibly a set of words that angered certain individuals within the well-known sim racing driver community as well, particularly Niles Noyox. The statement reads as follows, and you'll have it on your screen now. During the third running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual, it is clear that there were two major server issues which necessitated red flag stoppages. These were global disconnections caused by a security breach resulting from the unintentional sharing by race competitors of IP addresses connecting teams to the server. We have had 180 competitors taking part on 164 different simulators around the world, and we appreciate the frustrations of any individual drivers or teams affected. A full investigation will be launched at the conclusion of the event, and we will report back on the findings in due course. What does this say to you, Yannick?
The tough part is to circle back a little bit to what you said, that the main thing why Max Verstappen, for example, was a bit angered by how things went, weren't the two server outages, like the two red flags. Those were in the first 6 hours of the event, I believe. The problem then was that multiple teams, and a lot of them, had disconnection issues, like randomly, and so did Redline while being in the lead. And as far as I know, the problem then was that they were going to lose 4 laps, I believe, which they could have gotten back had they had race control decided to give them those back, as they apparently have done with like 1 or 2 laps for other teams, but decided against in Redline's case. So the core issue there is just the general instability and not the two server crashes because someone might have shared something, in my opinion. And that's something that we've seen over the past 2 years where the event has taken place as well. And doesn't really help the rFactor 2 side of things with its reputation of being somewhat complicated and, not stable while being great at the core. And that might be with the entire situation surrounding the sim and motorsport games too. I mean, there's been an upward trend ever since low fuel motorsport started to incorporate RF2, but with a RANT sport waiting in the wings to take over as an esports title, as unfortunate as it sounds, this might be the final nail in the coffin for rFactor 2, in my opinion. I hope it isn't, because competition is always good in video games, in simulators. In this case, usually brings out the best in the other developers too. But on the it was a big stage, so a lot of eyes on this because of the big names too, and yeah, it didn't really look professional at all. And the problem isn't with the people that are in the know about sim racing and how this works. The problem then lies within the casual observer who doesn't know the ins and outs and just thinks, oh, well, yeah, this doesn't work. This is unprofessional. This is basically just a computer game gone wrong. Which, for example, I've seen this morning Fox News Australia titled, so to speak, had a picture of Max Verstappen and his rant, and titled with "Doesn't he know it's just a video game?" Which is a slap in the face of teams that have been preparing for this for 5 months, really. So
and also generally for sim racing, because the fact is that since COVID-19 first hit in early 2020, sim racing has been on the rise. I
right.
mean, that's why we found that people like myself have ended up being one of the prominent commentary voices within this niche. And yeah, sim racing is a niche, but it is a professional sport as well. That's why you've got big manufacturers coming on board, because they realize the importance of sim racing more than anything. And there are more exciting events to come. We've got the iRacing Daytona 24 hours powered by VCO, the first part of the VCO Grand Slam in 2023. And it looks like it's going to be a bumper grid as always. It also sees the BMW M V8 hybrid in action for the first time on an iRacing special. Well, no, we had the Raw last week, but we've
True.
got the
Yeah.
first ever twice around the clock adventure. But a lot of people have been very, very vocal about iRacing, with the fact that iRacing and this is where this talk looks into the facts, that iRacing and the whole team there, when COVID-19 hit, there was a massive, massive influx of people being stuck at home, and the servers at iRacing being unable to cope. But what iRacing have done is that they acknowledged that there was a frailty within the servers, because there were like 5 to 10,000 people, hundreds and hundreds of teams. It does just go to show that as long as rFactor 2 and Studio 397 look at ways to move forward in the vein of iRacing, of the form of Assetto Corsa Competizione, then I think that if they put procedures in place, I mean, I would imagine Pierre Fillon from the ACO and Gerard Neveu, who's now the man sort of running motorsport games in terms of the the endurance side of things. And what's more, Romain Grosjean is one of the chief technical advisors for motorsport games currently. As long as the ACO, Motorsport Games, Studio 397 all work together mutually and not and look to get the issue solved sooner rather than later, then that could provide further stability. I mean, it wasn't the first time on the Le Mans Virtual Series that they had an issue, and they had the Nürburgring race. I think was it this year for this season. There was a red flag in that, or it might have been the season before. I can't remember quite when. but there was a previous incident where there was a red flag on a Le Mans Virtual Series race, and it was the Nürburgring race, and it then had to be called off, didn't it? So it
Yeah,
just goes to show that there, you know, like up until this point, the Le Mans Virtual Series had done a really, really good job. The broadcast was fantastic. We saw great racing. There were no issues in terms of the teams, but then when you get the ACO, FIA, WEC, Motorsport Games, and rFactor 2 having the official license for this, and it's not the only official license because we had all the talk about IndyCar
true.
just as we were recording our last live stream for 2022. And there's also the BTCC license. Um, they've also got NASCAR. I mean, we all remember what happened with NASCAR Ignition, which didn't really give Motorsport Games and Studio 397 a good name. I mean, what do you think that they need to do in order to move forward and try and get back out on a better curve than what has just sort of really put in a bit of a downer on the beginning of the 2023 sim racing season?
Yeah, yeah. Like you mentioned, they need to work together to figure this out, and make it, stable as quickly as possible and secure too. The problem I see with that is how do you prove that it's gotten better to the general public, like the audience and everyone who's just seen that it didn't work the way it should. Um, that I don't really know how that could work, but there needs to be a way to prove that somehow, to keep this going. Otherwise, there might not be a virtual Le Mans series on rFactor 2 for the next season, but maybe somewhere else, probably then, because I imagine the ACO isn't happy about this.
Yeah, it's just sort of the. I think I'm gonna also talk about Jimmy Broadbent, who spoke about the whole thing, and I think it's the quote that really, really resonated with me. Is like, R
Mm.
Factor 2 is like driving a racing car. Now, Jimmy, I have to give, Jimmy has experience both with obviously winning with Gordy Much in the Prague Racing Cup
Mm.
last year, part of the British Endurance Champion, the BEC, what used to be known as the Britcar Endurance Championship, and now he's bought Goldie and made it part of Team 87. So we're really excited here at Sim Racing Unlimited what the future holds for not just Jimmy but also for Team 87. And he said, RF2 is like driving a racing car. When everything works, it's amazing. But the moment you hear one thing rattle, you know you're about to get effed.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
not. We that's I. You obviously all know why I said that particular last word the way I did is because we are here for everybody. So I
Mhm.
don't want to. The streams might be a little bit different, but on this kind of video content, we want to make sure it's nice and PG and to give. But I think Jimmy's absolutely spot on with his analysis there, isn't he?
Yeah, it's like I mentioned earlier on, it's complicated to set up already, which works for or is the same for a real race car. Yeah, it sounds like more of an early 90s race car with those having a tendency to break down rather frequently. Even the top teams, watch an F1 race from 1990 or something and be
Or
amazed
or
on how few finishes there are.
or
Um,
speak to Mark Blundell about his time in the quali lap at Le Mans in the Nissan.
yeah.
with a buggered wastegate,
when a
straight to
break when a
yeah,
broken car actually improved things unintentionally. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, he's sort of right. The a fitting comparison I heard, I don't know, months ago, I think, or even years, was it's kind of like rocket science too, in
Mhm,
that you need like to pour in a serious amount of hours to actually have it work in the way you want to, and then it's great.
mhm.
But that can't really be any sort of endorsement for some. I think ease of access is something that's really needed. If you look
Yes.
around on Reddit, for example, there are so many questions popping up for any kind of sim, really, not just rFactor 2, but even the more straightforward ones like ACC or AMS2 or all the others, basically. And eliminating those hurdles only helps to get more people onto your platform. If they know, all right, it's gonna take forever, I'm not too sure about sim racing anyway, then they're gonna look for something else to start off, and likely gonna stay there too.
Yeah, but we want to hear from you out there. So don't forget, if you have an opinion, please keep it clean and please don't make it toxic. We're not here to spread toxicity. We're having a detailed, in-depth adult discussion. We'd appreciate for you to all do the same. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe to us here at Sim Racing Unlimited. And don't forget you can follow us on the relevant social media channels and tune in for future videos. We've got some exciting interviews coming up. We've also got the live streams as always. Yannik, once again, thank you for your time, buddy. Really
Thank you
appreciate it.
too. Yeah, always enjoy these talks. So thanks to everyone who's watching, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching. Take care. See you next time.